Hello, internet friends, and welcome to the Legion Second Pass look at the new Discipline Priest. So, I have, if you've watched any of my live testings, I've always said that, but now, after I, fine-tuned what I want to pay attention to, right, we go through basic spellbook, then jump on the artifact, look at artifact stuff, and then we go in the talents, right? So, looking up here at my channel guide, we get almost 6 hours of Discipline Priest today. Mostly because it's a brand new spec, right? It's been totally retooled since you see it right now in Warlords. However, the biggest point was like an hour of math nonsense on Atonement, which I'll go into later. But overall, if you want to watch the VOD, it's linked in the description box below, as well as other ways to support me and the stream right here, and what I do on YouTube, all down there below. The list of all the bugs, and which is a lot of them. A lot of them are like problems right now with like different ratios or tooltips not being updated, or some art that is shared across the, but it's like a whole page. So you can read that, you can read my notes. In my notes, however, the last build to this build has changed something with Discipline Priest. And if you want to read the big forum threads, it's listed right there. It actually snapshots to a post by Siori from Midwinter, I believe, that went over all this like last build, this build issues they've now arisen with the Discipline Priest. So check that out if you want to see more about that for Disc. But let's go into this real quick. The Light's Wrath is so pretty. What a really pretty artifact weapon. Anyway, let's take that off right now. Take it off. Take it off. Alright, basic spellbook time. So, your mastery is Absolution, which increases the healing transferred through Atonement by 20%. This is a multiplicative bonus on top of Atonement, which is now the main core of how you heal as a Discipline Priest. So, Plea, which is a single target instant heal for a low amount of healing, Powered Shield, Shadow Mend, and Powered Radiance will apply Atonement to your target for 15 seconds. And when you deal spell damage when you're DPSing, you will instantly heal all targets affected by Atonement for 40% of the damage done. Now, the rabbit hole on this one goes pretty deep. And first off, Absolution is a multiplicative bonus of Atonement. So you're always adding on a multiplicative amount from 40%. So 20% more mastery right now through Absolution means that I am now going to have 48% Atonement. 10% of 40 would be 4, 20% being 8. So you actually add 8% more damage transfer. Stat weights for Discipline, I'm not sure exactly. It sounds like Haste Mastery or Mastery Haste would be their best bet. And then maybe even Versatility and then Critical Strike. Crit is good for healers, but since it is random and you cannot always count on crit, it might not be incredibly powerful. There are also like really no crit synergies for Discipline Priest. But casting spells faster, having a lower GCD, and utilizing some spells that reduce the cooldown via haste, or that cast faster with haste, like Radiance or Penance, or even Light's Wrath. Haste looks good. Obviously, the more mastery you get, the more of your damage is transferred to be healing. And then Versatility increases your flat amount of damage you deal. However, there is no double dip with Discipline. So Versatility gives you a flat damage amplification. On anything that is a Penance type heal, the damage is increased, which increases the heal. But there's no like damage increases and the healing increases. No. Abilities that just heal, like take like Halo for example, or even like Shadow Mend, if they just heal, they'll gain the healing bonus of Versatility. But on Atonement-based spells, there's no double dipping. So Versatility is actually like not bad for Discipline. But your other passive is Focused Will, which is melee attacks against you will cause you to take up to 15% less damage for 8 seconds, up to 2 stacks. So it's like a PvP benefit, or like questing, you're getting smacked in the face, then you'll stack out Focused Will. It's just to kind of offset the fact that you are obviously a clothy with no armor. Basically, no armor. But so how Atonement works by default is that you stack it with like a Powered Shield, will hit it. If you cast a Shadow Mend, you'll get that off Shadow Mend. If you cast Plea, you get it off Plea. And if you cast Holy Word Radiance, you'll also get it from Radiance. Excuse me. So you do get all of that synergy. And the core of the Discipline Priest is to keep Atonement stacks up. It lasts for 15 seconds. And the people that have Atonement up will benefit from you doing damage. It's very, very easy, very straightforward. However, the rotation overall is that you're going to want to be casting Penance basically on cooldown. You're going to want to be casting Powered Shield on cooldown. You'll notice that Powered Shield has no Weakened Soul effect. It costs some mana, reduced by haste on the cooldown, but there's no Weakened Soul. Weakened Soul is gone. There's just a cooldown on Powered Shield. Overall, though, Powered Shield, as it's been the biggest problematic issue of Discipline, is that they could absorb so much damage that your other healers had a problem with healing damage, because if you absorbed it all, then they had nothing to heal. Right? But with Powered Shield being a very, very small amount of overall healing in effectiveness by not taking damage, it prevents it, it's more of a utility tool. It helps you put up Atonement, and it helps stop a little bit of incoming damage, but it's basically a rotational thing. The Discipline Priest feels very much like it is a DPS, in the sense that you are only going to be, you're paying attention to your Atonement stacks on your raid and your party members, but your core is that you want to be DPSing. So I'm going to go over all the core abilities first with that, and then I'll go over all the utility stuff and extra crap after that too. So Smite is your main filler spell. Smite's a very short cast. This does not cost any mana. Like, honestly, you can't run out of mana. Smite costs nothing. There's no out-of-combat or in-combat mana regen anymore. Again, remember that in Legion, it's just mana regen is constantly. Like, your mana regen generates at 44,000 every 5 seconds. Forever. In or out of combat. But Smite does some holy damage, and then what it does is it puts a debuff on the target that will absorb damage they are dealing. So I'm not sure if this damage by Smite is being absorbed that would also affect, like, if they're doing, like, an AoE or they have dots rolling. I assume it probably only works on, like, auto-attack stuff to help your tank, right? The damage amount that it absorbs is based on the base amount of Smite, which is, of course, affected by your versatility by doing more damage. There are things in the artifact later that'll make Smite do more damage but not increase the Absorb Shield, but the Absorb Shield stacks 3 times, so you can cast Smite up to 3 times in a row, and that's the maximum amount of Absorb you can have on the target. Now, it absorbs the damage the target deals, basically preventing it from even going off. So if you Powered Shield the tank, and they also have, you know, stacks of Smite on the target, they're just taking less damage overall. So you are preventing damage being done on the target that's it's doing the damage, and then the target that is being damaged by the rotation, of course, with utilizing Powered Shield, probably on cooldown, I imagine. It costs no mana either. It's really cheap. So otherwise, you're going to have Shadowward Pain up all the time. It just deals initial shadow damage, and then over the course of 18 seconds, does more shadow damage. But it's the same thing it does for Shadow, right? But the thing is, you have to look at it as like a reverse renew. So if you have out multiple atonements, then all your different Shadowward Pains keep ticking. So it's like an offensive renew. That's all it is. It's basically just an offensive renew. That if you get to cross dot with it, it does more healing. But you're going to basically have a powered Shadowward Pain on every target, and then you're going to rotate around Powered Shields as you see fit. Your only major, like, large heal is Shadow Mend, which, pause, Shadow Mend always applies the dot. In my Shadow Priest video, I thought that Shadow Priest didn't get applied by the damage dot of Shadow Mend, but you have to have, it has to work on effective healing, so you have to actually take damage to gain the Shadow Mend bots. If I punch this guy in the face, right, and if I get some damage taken, and I Shadow Mend myself, which heals for a lot, it costs a lot more mana too, you get the Shadow Mend dot, which the Shadow Mend dot is always half of the healing that's effective, so if Shadow Mend crits, the reverse is that over the next so many seconds, every 1 second you'll take a percentage of the total amount, which is half from the total amount of healing done, to make you take in damage. But if a target is, like, taking damage, like a boss or whatever, they're getting smacked in the face, they have a dot on them, whatever, there's AoE going out, as long as the damage is taken, the dot goes away. But the Shadow Mend dot itself has to be, I guess, satisfied with either it doing damage or something else doing damage to the target that was then Shadow Mended. But Shadow Mend also applies Atonement and does a good amount of healing. It's your only baseline, like, direct heal on a target. And it's not too bad. It does cost quite an okay amount of mana. But that's Shadow Mend for you. Additionally, we went over Holy Word Radiance. I showed you the animation, but what Radiance does, I'm going to show you on these orcs right here. Orcs, fighting, everything. So, this is your most expensive spell. Power Radiance is a very long cast time, no cooldown, where a burst of light heals a friendly target and their 2 nearest allies. From what I have seen, it literally is nearest. I don't think it has a component of balancing. But I don't know, though, if I can't really test this without in a group. But you will apply Atonement to the target and to 2 nearby targets. Right now, Atonement keeps applying to me. Like, Radiance won't only heal the grunts for some reason. So I don't know why that is. But it just won't only heal them. Probably because they're not in my actual party. But Radiance is your AoE heal and your AoE way to apply multiple versions of your Atonement buff. So now if you do deep damage, I have Atonement, and these 2 targets have Atonement too. But it is your most expensive heal, by far. 71.5k is a lot. But that's what it is. Alright. Other major components of your healing rotation, DPS rotation, is Plea. So Plea is a quick, effective heal of an ally for a very small amount. The mana cost, however, will increase by 100% for each Atonement you have active. So since Plea is so easy to spam, as it has no cooldown instant cast, the more Pleas you have active, the more it costs. But depending on like how many people you're actually paying attention to in your raid, and how many people in your dungeon need healing, Plea won't really cost ever that much. It takes 5 to 6 stacks for it to even equal a powered shield. And you can never make it cost more than Radiance, but Radiance saves you globals to put up 1 plus 2 nearest allies for Atonement, whereas it would take you 3 globals with Plea. So there is a back and forth on on that, obviously. Sorry, my throat's a little bit a long stream today, so... But Plea is rotational. It is easy to keep multiple people with Atonement up, like your 2 tanks. But again, you're going to rotate in powered shields as well, and that also applies and refreshes Atonement. So those are your 2 ways to make it happen. Plea is cheaper at first, gets more mana costy, and of course you have powered shield on cooldown, I would imagine. Penance is your only you can only use Penance offensively now, unless you take a talent, which we'll go into much later. So you can only use it offensively. There's no cooldown reduction, however, Penance does cast faster, or channel faster, for your haste. So the 3 volleys of damage will actually heal every single time they hit. And if each of them crit individually, it will be a crit Atonement heal. For Atonement heals to actually crit, the base has to crit too. Like, there is no, like, back and forth on, like, well, if the damage doesn't crit, does Atonement crit? But what I've seen, the actual heal has to crit for it to show up as a critical heal on your target. Of course, damage amplifying effects or bosses taking more damage for a duration will mean that your damage is stronger, so you'll actually heal for more. Of course, that is a thing. But Penance is just holy damage. You can cast it while moving by default. It does cost a okay sum of mana, but not too much. And that is all your main heals. There we go. So you work around with Plea, Powered Shield, Shadow Mend, and Radiance. And then you DPS with Shadow Word, Penance, and of course Smite. Smite also debuffs the target. Shadow Word Pain can be, you know, cross-dotted for more renew healing style stuff. And then of course Penance is very single target and your largest source of healing in a very short window. Other than of course spamming Shadow Mend, which costs, you know, 30,000 mana as well, and has the reverse effect of it as well, of the damage requirement to be taken. But that's that. So otherwise than that, you have your Dispel Magic, which is your offensive Dispel. 44,000 mana. You have Fade, which reduces all your threat. There's also a artifact perk that will change that a little bit later, which we'll go into. Leap of Faith is a 90-second cooldown where you will pull the spirit of a party member directly to you. And it can no longer be glyphed to pull yourself to the ally anymore. I've not seen anything. There's no talent that does it. Maybe it's a PvP talent that does it, but there's no pull yourself to them anymore, which is kind of sad. I've heard that's like a big, not a big deal, but it's like, it's quality of life kind of thing, because some fights you want to move yourself off the target, but I have to leave with faith. You can still levitate yourself, of course. Mass Dispel is your AoE Mass Dispel, where you will remove all harmful magic effects from 10 friendly targets and 1 beneficial magic effect from up to 10 enemy targets. And then, of course, it is potent enough to remove magic that is not normally dispellable. You have a Mass Res. All healers have a Mass Res. You also have your single target Res as well. You have Shackle Undead. As we go over to this page, you can still shackle some undead. Your only cooldown is Shadow Fiend baseline, which, remember, Shadow Fiend does damage, but because of Atonement, Shadow Fiend is also a healing cooldown too, technically. So as Shadow Fiend whacks away over there, same thing can be played for Mindbender as well. But it is a healing cooldown, sort of, so more people you have Atonement on, if you Shadow Fiend, you'll also help your healing as well. Psychic Scream, AoE, Disorient, the Fear, as it has been. Powered Barrier is your raid cooldown, which I was told that the bubble is actually larger now. So that's nice, but that's your raid cooldown. You take, for 10 seconds, reduces all damage taken by 25% and prevents damage from delaying spell casting, 3-minute cooldown. Pain Suppression is your single target reduction in damage, 40% less damage taken for 8 seconds, castable while stunned, 5-minute cooldown though. 5 minutes. But a 40% DR is a pretty huge deal for a tank or someone soaking a mechanic or whatever have you. But it's a really big oh crap button, for sure. Still have Mind Vision, so you can still mind the visions somewhere. I was told you have to actually use Mind Vision in the Artifact quest for Discipline Priest, which is kind of cool. And outside of that, everything else you're seeing is talents, actually. But we have Mind Control, which Mind Control is a little different now. I'll take off Dominant Mind real quick. But Mind Control is a 1 level above limit on what you can mind control. If you do not have mind control talented, then it's a 30-second control. You do lose control of your character, cannot be used against mechanical beings. Everything else can be mind controlled and has a DR with other disorientating effects. So it doesn't last very long on players. If you do take Dominant Mind, however, you can mind control up to 1 minute long. Again, still no mechanical things, but you cannot use this on players. But the mind-controlled minion, NPC, is your pet for the duration. And you can just mind-control them again once it breaks, so you can always have a pet with you when you're questing in Legion, for example. Or you can use this in dungeons to have a CC'd mob the entire time, and use it on bosses and whatever have you. It's super powerful. Really, really, really good. Sorry about my throat. 6.5 hours talking about Discipline Priest being mad at their math later on. Can do that to you. Alright, so otherwise than that, you have Purify, which is your friendly dispel, which removes all magic effects on the target and disease effects. And if you do dispel something, of course it goes on cooldown for 8 seconds. Your other cooldown is Rapture, which is for a 2-minute cooldown, and for 8 seconds, Power Word Shield has no cooldown. So you can spam Power Word Shield. I didn't show it right there, I'll show it later, but you can actually Power Word Shield and then Rapture. It resets the cooldown of Power Word Shield when you do cast Rapture. So you can actually Power Word Shield, then Rapture, and then start Power Word Shielding with no cooldown. But again, Power Word Shield isn't like that powerful anymore, so it just basically helps you lay out some absorbs and get more atonements out there on a GCD quickness. Which again, I think really lends itself to the fact that haste is going to be really good for a Discipline Priest, specifically because of the GCD argument. And because the faster you can put up atonements and go back to doing damage, the faster you can heal those targets and the more you can heal them for. But that is everything baseline for the Discipline Priest. Let us slap on the Light's Wrath and get in here. So again, in the video description box below, links to all the other things that are pertinent to this video, but the big thing on the notes page, you will see that in the official WoW thread that was been posted on by many different, more seasoned Discipline Priests than I, obviously, and then there's also math that I was working out. There's a lot more math going on with Atonement once you kind of work in Light's Wrath, and I'll go over some of that, but if you want to read a whole bunch of text, a lot of it, not only from me, but on that WoW thread, please feel free in the video description box below. So Light's Wrath is called Light's Wrath and actually gives you Light's Wrath, which is a long cast It's a long cast, same thing as Radiance, same cast time as Radiance. It's a 90-second cooldown where you draw upon the power of Light's Wrath to deal a ton of radiant damage, which Radiant is Shadow and Holy damage. And it's increased by 10% per ally affected by your atonement. Now, I'll show this twice as I talk about it after I do this, but the animation is still broken, and I hope they fix it. So, you put up a couple atonements, right? And then you Light's Wrath. But the animation's broken, so you just you don't hold anything up in the air. But you actually do pull in little wispy things from your allies. But it does a ton of damage, 229,000 damage. And then, of course, it atones for 48 and a integer-ish % of that. But I'll bring this up now and forget about it. On Light's Wrath, there is a Paragoning perk that everyone gets after you've unlocked everything. Costs hundreds of thousands of artifact power. For Discipline, however, it is a damage increase per point. For other healers, it's actually just healing done. For tanks, it's max HP, and for damage dealers for DPS, it's DPS, right? It's extra damage done. But also, healers gain stamina. Everyone gains stamina per perk. But then all healers actually gain 1% damage done for every trait purchased. However, Discipline Priests only gain 0.5%. Now, I thought at first that was a balancing tool, used to make it so that they don't scale too out of control with 34 or more percentage of damage done as you unlock your artifact. Come to find out, in this build, they have removed the synergy between the Light's Wrath perk damage, all 17% of it at max level, at max 34, and the Forbidden Flame Paragoning, I call it that, of your artifact later on. Both currently, and in this build, as I'm speaking to you now, in this state and time, Forbidden Flame and Light's Wrath damage amp do not increase the amount of damage that goes to Atonement. So to figure out how much damage goes into your Atonement, you need to reverse engineer the damage of the spell. So you'll see your Atonement is doing, right now I have 48%, but if you actually took 48% of, like, this Shadow Word Pain, for example, or this Smite, for example, it's not the actual amount. Because the damage you're gaining from your artifact is extra damage. Think of it as the glyph right now that affects Smite to make it do more damage, but that damage doesn't equate to Atonement's healing. But this thing is the entire everything, kit and caboodle, which I don't understand. And this was like an hour of the stream that if you watch the VOD, you'll get more information. But I just don't understand why they're balancing it like this. It's very frustrating to figure this out. But to go back to Light's Wrath now, I'll show you what the actual animation does look like. So if you auto-attack with your staff out, you actually have your staff equipped, right? And it's actually in your hand now. And you can cast it like, oh, it goes away. Damn it. Now I can cast it. Wah, wah, pshoo. So the problem is, like, you can sheath your weapon, right? You can, like, sheath it. But the sheathing of the weapon doesn't, like, work all the time. Like, if you're in the combat pose, you can't sheath your weapon. You can, when you're out of combat, you can, like, out of the combat pose. But you can't hold your staff in your hand because they don't have that in this game. But for Light's Wrath, you use it to channel the power into it, but then you, like, it just teleports to your back, and then you just, like, slam dunk this radiant damage on them. It looks like the sped up version of Shadow Crash's animation, where you're like at the wow blop. But it's weird. I don't know why they don't just, like, leave your staff there, and then you shoot the beam of radiant energy out of your staff. I have no idea why you don't do that, because it would look so much better than the version right now, which just kind of, like, slam dunks it. You're not Asmo Dunk from Heroes of the Storm, okay? But maybe they'll fix it eventually. I think a lot of the animations that work with your weapons now broke a couple builds ago, so they'll hopefully fix it, but it's a bug I put in the report. So Invoke the Light. Now to go back to my Atonement thing. Any perk on the artifact, however, will attribute to Atonement's damage to healing ratio. So Invoke the Light is 15% more smite damage. And again, anything on the artifact that is the artifact itself will work. So, but just not this thing and not this. Shield of Faith is 15% more absorb on Powered Shield. Share the Light is that casting Powered Shield on a target other than yourself will also shield you for 15% as much. So if I bubble this guy, I get a little baby shield. The baby shield does not give me atonement, though. The baby shield is just a baby shield. 15% of the amount. And Powered Shield can crit, so if it does crit, you will get a larger shield on yourself. And again, Powered Shield does not stack either, nor does the shield on yourself stack. It just activates for whatever amount you are shielding for, rather. So those other ones crit there. You saw the absorb crit, and I had a larger shield. That's that. So Darkest Shadows is 10% more healing done by Shadow Mend. It does heal for a lot. It's a lot of healing. Burst of Light increases the healing done by Powered Radiance by 15%. For those of you wondering what my add-on for my character sheet, it's called Deja Character Stats. The link is in the description box below if you want to download that for your beta testing if you are in. Otherwise, I'll use it on live, most likely. It's really nice. It cleaned it up. It has, like, your equipped amount of eye level and then your actual amount of eye level. Obviously, I don't use trinkets while testing because the procs mess things up. Edge of Dark and Light is 15% more damage dealt by Shadow Word Pain. That goes to your atonement amount. Speed of the Pious is 30% movement speed while casting Penance, which is just kind of neat. A little sprinty poo when you're casting Penance, which is nice because you can already move while you cast it. Doomsayer increases the duration of Rapture by 3 seconds. So that means that Rapture now lasts for 11 seconds. So you get, it's 2 more, up to 3 more if you have a low global for Powered Shields to actually be cast during the Rapture buff. Which is fine. It's nice. Borrowed Time now is applying Atonement via any source that applies Atonement to a target, even a target that already has Atonement on it, by refreshing it or whatnot, will reduce the cast time of your next Smite or Light's Wrath by 15%, or cause your next Penance to channel 15% faster. So if you apply this, you get a faster Penance. If you apply this, you get a faster, Smite? And if you apply this again, you get a faster Light's Wrath. So it's just a rotational thing with how the rotation for Discipline is very, you know, cast this, put up Atonement, do some damage. Like, it gives you this weaving back and forth. And as overall, the skill cap or skill ceiling for Discipline is going to be a little bit ridiculous, I think. Overall, it's a very, to care about buffs and debuffs and healer things, and also do damage to do healer things. So Borrowed Time just helps accelerate that, like, that back and forth of, like, putting up atonements and casting spells. So I think the best benefit is probably the timing for Light's Wrath to cast faster, or to channel Penance faster. The Wrath time is, like, okay, I guess. Right? Like, for Smite... Oh, sorry, but Smite is okay. Light's Wrath and Penance probably the best benefit. You're, like, casting something on a global and then smiting, and then casting on the global and then smiting, casting a global and smiting again. It's, like, okay. But really, it helps just cast Light's Wrath and Penance a little quicker. Vestments of Discipline. So activating Fade reduces all damage you take by 10% for 6 seconds. So Fade becomes a small little DR there for you. Pain is in your mind is a 30-second cooldown reduction on Pain Suppression, which does make it now a 4.5-minute cooldown. It's helpful. It's, like, okay, I guess. I kind of think it should reduce it by a minute. But I guess they feel that Pain Suppression is a super big cooldown, and having it only so often is the whole point. But it does only one target, and it's only 40% damage taken. So, I don't know. Maybe if it was 4 minutes, it'd be too powerful, but I kind of feel like this should be a minute-long take off that. Something on my mouse. Mouse, please. Alright. We've got Confession, which is 6% more damage done by Penance. So that just means that, like, it's spread out over the whole duration of the spell, which is 6% more damage on the actual spell tooltip, which is good. I mean, Penance is your largest heal, I would say. And as you gain more and more haste, of course, the amount of healing done by Penance happens faster, too. So That's also a tuning fork, I suppose. Taming the shadows is Shadow Mend has a 50% chance to not deal damage to you. So that just means that sometimes the dot will not apply. It's not good or bad. The side note for PvPers, while I bring up PvP very often, not very often, is that you can apply the Shadow Mend, heal to yourself, and then the damage dot can break like polymorph or fears. So you can actually kind of use it as you were using if you did PvP before. That you can use it, like the Shadow or Death effect on someone that deals damage to you, and then it breaks your polymorph or your fear or whatever, or your I guess your sap or something like that. And you know the vanish sap nonsense, or I don't know. I don't PvP, but the Shadow Man dot does break that or break those things. But this would make it so that sometimes it doesn't actually apply. But it's kind of like whatever. It's mostly a big PvE buff, so it's okay. The Golden Dragons now, though, have, I would say, a pretty definitive path, and you're probably going to want to get Barrier of the Devoted first. So this increases the healing done by atonement by 100%, double, on targets inside your barrier. So right now, if you see, like, my smite atonement healing, right now, if I just do this and start smiting away, 25k, 25k, mine's pretty alright. But if I barrier these targets, and now if I smite, it'll be 51. Yeah, 51.2. So if you lay out some crazy radiances, or you put Rapture up there and you blanket some Power Word shields, and then a big AoE comes out there, and you're gonna bubble the AoE when it happens, and then you start DPSing, all those targets that have atonement are gonna be healing for double of the atonement healing, which is really good. But again, you want to go through some shenanigans right now. If you look at your smite damage at 63.9k, but your double atonement, which is right now technically at 58% or 98% or 96%. Yeah, 48 times 2 would be 96%. It's almost up there to be 100% of your actual damage dealt, but because of the shenanigans with this, and of course this later on, your damage will always be higher than your atonement, because it always will be. Unless you get over 50% oh, it's not 50% mastery. Yeah, you want to get 50 or 60% mastery, and then technically underpowered barrier, you will be doing more damage than the healing coefficient would originally give you. So, but it's weird. I don't think it feels very good to see what your damage you're doing, and then actually the math doesn't add up that you do the right percentage because of that shenanigans. But because of the bonus of barrier and it being like a really great early dungeoning tool, that this might be the first go-to for the Discipline Priest. The other one that's next is Sins of the Many, which increases all damage you deal by 1% per ally affected by your atonement. So for all your atonements you have, you'll see a buff up here, Sins of the Many. And this is just a flat damage increase. This will increase the amount of atonement healing that happens. But since this can only ever be like 5 stacked in a dungeon, and for like solo content it'll be 1, or maybe like, 2 or 3 if you have a small group, it's not that powerful. But in a raid, you can get out. I tried really hard to spam as much as I could with Radiance on these orcs. And all the NPCs around here. I got about 12, and the 12th atonement fell off immediately. But I think it's probably very possible to have like an 8 to 12% damage all the time, depending on how you weave your atonements in during raids. Which is like, even if it's 10% or even 5%, that still adds up over time over a raid to really add to your actual damage dealt, which gives you more healing, of course. And of course, since you are more or less a DPS caster that also tries to help heal, which kind of makes you kind of like this weird support hybrid again in the new Disc Priest, it helps that you can get as much damage you can get from everywhere, right? But this does apply to your atonement. And your last one is called Power of the Dark Side. I know. Shadow Word Pain has a chance to increase the damage dealt by your next penance by 100%. The problem is, it looks great, but I think it's another 0.7 RPPM, where it means that you'll get like less than 1 a minute. So it'll proc like right now when I cast this Shadow Word Pain. It can proc on the cast of Shadow Word Pain because it does damage, and it can proc on the dot ticks of Shadow Word Pain. But right now it'll proc immediately because I'm, haven't been in combat for a while, so RPPMs always proc immediately, and you get this like super radiant looking penance right now. Wham, wham. Looks nice. But again, like if I stand here now for like a minute, I may never get another proc. So they may tune this to be a little more prevalent later on, but I have all these dots ticking, all these Shadow Word Pains, and I'm just not getting any more. It has a very low proc chance, because I think if it's a 0.7 RPPM, that means on average you get less than 1 per minute. Which I think is kind of a bad thing. You want to have these really strong penance lasers to help you heal, but you don't get it very often. Also, apparently I'm gaining insanity from casting these, even though I'm not a Shadow Priest. I didn't notice that before. That's a little weird. But it's just so rare. It's weird. I kind of feel like it should have like a chance on crit for Shadow Word Pain or something, kind of like how Shadowy Apparitions work for Shadow Priests. Like, if it had, like, a chance on crit and then just had, like, an ICD so it doesn't ever proc on itself, it would give you a reason for crit scaling. Because there's no crit scaling anywhere else for Discipline Priest, rather. For Shadow Priest, yeah, of course. But for Disc, there's nothing that makes you want to care about crit very much, other than, obviously, crit heals, which are not really consistent, so healers normally don't rely on crit very much, unless, I guess, you're a Holy Paladin. And it's just a weird thing, but it's so rare to get that super penance, which I guess the whole point of it is they had the buff last for a long time. You can sort of save the proc rather for like a window you need it for, because it lasts for 20 seconds. But it's just not that often. It's just not. It barely happens. Anyway, we'll go for talents now. I'm gonna go through your utility talents first, get them out of the way, and then we'll go through everything else. So, Body and Soul, you've seen it this whole time. With no Recon Soul effect anymore on Power Word Shield, you can definitely have Body and Soul up a lot more often, obviously. Angelic Feather, however, does have a 100% uptime if you want to weave the feathers throughout the duration. You get a 5-second movement speed buff for 30%. 3 feathers, 3 charges, 40% movement speed. You know what feathers do. But you can put these feathers out here for a while, and they last for... How long do they last again? I don't even remember. You can cast your feathers, you can help your kiting tanks or whatever have you. But if you quest with feathers, you can keep casting them on yourself. And you can keep up this sprint for a very long time. So here we go again. And then I can cast another one right in front of me. And I get it. So for PvP movement, maybe if we're questing, moving between nodes or quest places, feathers. And Masochism is your Shadow Mend on yourself will actually give you a hot. But only when you Shadow Mend yourself, you'll get a hot. So if I punch this guy in the face, yeah, get punched. Or slapped. Yeah, that's right, whatever, bonk. Get Light's Wrath. Woo! If you Shadow Mend yourself, you get a hot on yourself. Right there, Masochism. So you can stack it too, because again, it's based on the effective healing of the ability. So you can hit yourself with a couple of Shadow Mends and get a larger... My brain right now. So much Discipline Priest knowledge today. But the Masochism buff will stack multiple times. Like the hot will. Because it's based on effective healing. And then we went over Dominant Mind earlier. Psychic Voice is a 30-second reduction in the cooldown of your Psychic Scream. And that's all it does. And Shining Force is a knockback, which I have to go to find a crab real quick, or a Mushan, to show you. So Shining Force is a 1-minute cooldown. It's a knockback you can place on a character. To the crabs! But you can place it on yourself or a ally. And it is a 20-yard knockback, and then a 70% movement speed snare for 3 seconds. So if I pull this Mushan right here, this River Beast, come over here, dude, and I Light's Wrath myself, then he's snared. So it's a pretty significant snare there. It's not too bad, but it's an AoE knockback, some extra CC, or more Psychic Screams, or of course the Mind Control if you prefer that as well. But goodbye, River Beast. So it's really nice. The utility tiers for Discipline Priest look pretty good. I kind of think Dominate Mind will probably overshadow everything else for the most part, at least in PvE content. It's really, really good in comparison. Then we'll go over your mana tier next, and then I'll go over everything else. So mana-wise, you have Shield Discipline, which is the old version of Rapture, which is your powered shields. When they're completely absorbed, you will gain 1% of your maximum mana back. So you may have seen it in the combat log here a couple times, but if I do one of these guys, say they die instantly, the shield goes away. 11,000 mana is 1% of your mana. So it's half the cost, basically, of the powered shield. But it's a passive. You get mana back when you rotate your powered shields in. Your other option here is, of course, Powered Solace, which is an offensive move that is free on a cooldown reduced by haste that does some holy damage up front, and it gives you 0.75% of your maximum mana, which is like 8,000 something. Let me spend some mana real quick here. I liked Radiance. Solace, rather. I'm casting Radiance right now. I like Solace because it gives you something to do on the move after your penance is off cooldown, right? You can still do this, and of course it still heals for your through your atonement. But yeah, it's how much mana is it? 8250. So the reason why this tier is weird is because Mindbender is so good. So Mindbender gives you a 1-minute cooldown on Shadow Fiend. Otherwise, it was 3-minute cooldown. And again, remember, it's a DPS ability that it does healing through Atonement. But it gives you 0.75% of your maximum mana each time the Mindbender attacks. That's 8250 every time it actually attacks. And it has a 1.5 second swing timer reduced by haste. So the more haste you stack, the more mana you gain, the more damage it does, the more healing you do. So yeah, if you have Radiance going on here, I mean, you smite this guy to get in combat, and then you Mindbender, like, he's gonna go to town. So I'm smiting for healing, he's doing healing. If I have powered, Shadow Word up there, you get all this rolling together. It's a lot of, it's very supporty trickle healing. This is effectively a 48-second cooldown. To give you, he attacks like 5 to 6 times, I want to say. Let's see. So he attacked, not too bad. This was the Mindbender this whole time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 attacks in 12 seconds. And each of them gave me 8250 back mana. So it's a huge cooldown. And it's a problem because, like, Powered Solace, yeah, you can, like, stack damage buffs with it, which we'll go into in a second here. But Mindbender is just, like, it's mana, it's damage, it's healing because of damage. And Discipline and Solace just don't stack up to it right now. And if you're going to be stacking haste, a lot of it, as a Discipline Priest, then Mindbender only gets better. So does Solace, where you'll get more of them casted. But this costs a GCD. This costs 1 global cooldown. Over the course of a minute, this will cost you up to 6. And globals are very important for Discipline. So the mana regeneration of Powered Solace, I kind of think, needs to be higher, or this needs to be lower to make them competitive. Up to you, though. I'm not a healer. Maybe I'm totally wrong here. But you have Schism, which was recently changed. So Schism now is a huge nuke. A huge shadow nuke with a 6-second cooldown, and it lasts for 6 seconds on a target. It costs okay mana. But you attack the target with shadow energy, dealing a whole bunch of shadow damage, and then you increase the damage that you deal to the target by 30%. I did test Schism and Twist of Fate with Mindbender, since these buff the damage the target that you deal to the target, or the damage that you deal. It does not buff your pets. So it may buff your mind-controlled pet, but I doubt it. It does not buff Mindbender either. But if you cast Schism, you get like this. There's no animation at all right now, so I hope they fix that in the future. But you can kind of, obviously if you have a Shadow Word Pain rolling, it'll do more damage. But if you get in here, and you attack them during that cooldown right there, you're going to get a whole lot of extra healing. Because you're doing 30% more damage. But again, you have to rotate Schism on this really short cooldown. And you have to make sure you're powered shielding, and you're doing this and doing that, and then you gotta cast Schism again, and of course it does healing too. And then you gotta like smite and get a penance off in there too. But then you gotta cast it again. And then you gotta cast these again. Then you gotta cast that, you gotta cast this, and you gotta cast, then you gotta cast maybe a penance right there. Maybe you get a schism in there too, and then cap a Light's Wrath in there as well. Like, what a bonk, right? It has its purposes. But you already have so much to pay attention to as discipline, then this is just like compounding that. Your other options here are Castigation, which is penance fires a 4th bolt, basically. So you get 4 bolts, which increases the overall amount of healing that penance does do, the damage it does as well, and as you again gain more haste, then it'll channel even faster. So it's a really good possibility. You're going to be casting so many penances over time. This also means that whenever you proc Power of the Dark Side, it will do more healing, because it doubles that healing of the extra bolt as well, of course. So it's all part of the same thing. And the Penitent is this is my Resident Sleeper face. It means you can cast Penance on a allied target again, and it deals a okay amount of healing. It's actually less healing, I believe. No, it's a little bit more healing if you do it. It's less damage comparatively. It's like, what is that? It's not even 10% more damage dealt, something like that. I don't know. I don't do math. I did enough math trying to figure out atonement nonsense. You'll forgive me. But if you like having penance to cast on someone, there you go. But again, if you cast penance on someone, it does not atonement because you're not doing damage. So you just only heal one person. Which, that's up to you. I like the interplay of the skill cap raise for Schism. Or Castigation for a good set and forget. But you'll let me know how that works out in the comments down below, I'm sure, or you'll figure it out in Legion, because I'm not a discipline priest. So next we've got down here, I've had Power Infusion toggled this whole time. It is a personal buff. It is a personal buff where you infuse yourself with power for 20 seconds, increasing your haste by 25%, and reducing the mana cost of all spells by 20%. It's a really good personal. You can throw it up with Mindbender, heal attack faster, because it gives you haste. It reduces the cooldown, the mana cost of all your spells, so like large spell casts like Radiance will be cheaper. And it's a good, oh crap, I need another cooldown. The Discipline Priest brings a lot of kind of cooldown help, right? You have your Barrier, you have Pain Suppression, you have Rapture, you have Light's Wrath, which if you use Light's Wrath properly, that's a huge chunk of healing to multiple people. Right? Even if you have like 6, 7, 8 people with your atonement on them, which is kind of about average, I think, for like a mythic raid, a Discipline Priest will probably be paying attention to generally between 4 and 8 atonement buffs. Because you can't get more than like 11 or 12 anyway. So you kind of want to make sure you're always focusing on rotating around to who needs to be healed up. And between 4 and 8, I would imagine. Obviously, one of them has to be the main tank at all times. Because, of course. But if not both of them, if they both are taking damage from something. Or they're both tanking adds, or one's got an add, one's got a boss's butt, or they've got a Saber Lash or whatever effect. So Power Infusion gives you another cooldown. Whereas Contrition is just 2 more seconds on the Atonement duration. So this means that Atonement does last 17 seconds now. So that means that you have more globals to get in. It also means you can layer out more Atonements. And as you gain more haste, again, as your global cooldown goes down, you need 50% haste to have a 1-second global cooldown. So every 10% haste is 0.1 seconds off your global cooldown. So with Power Infusion, if you have 50% haste or 25% haste baseline, you'll be at a 1-second GCD in Power Infusion. But as Contrition just gives you longer time on your Atonement buff, right? You get 17 seconds. Atonement does not pandemic, by the way. People might have wondered if it pandemics. It does not pandemic, as you see right here. It's a 16-second buff with a 0 tick, making it 17 seconds. So, Contrition I like personally. Just gives you a little more wiggle room because you're already so strapped for keeping up atonements and also healing and also doing damage. The other one is Twist of Fate, which Twist of Fate for Shadow is when you damage something below 35% health, so you gain the 20% increased damage and healing. But for Discipline, you have to actually heal someone. Now, of course, if you're always having your atonement on a tank, then yeah, it could proc all the time. these guys have low health anyway, so when I hit them with it, I get Twist of Fate. The back and forth as well on Twist of Fate is there's no double dip. So if you do a healing move, if you have a healing ability that requires Twist of Fate, you will cause it to heal for 20% more. But if you use atonement-based spells, they just do 20% more damage. So that damage then will amplify the atonement, but there's no back and forth double dipping. There's none. But you can stack Schism and Twist of Fate for having a 30% more damage on the target and 20% more damage done by you. So that is a bit of a interweave there, but you have to heal someone below 35%. So again, if your tank is always being atonement healed by your Shadowward Pain, or by you, of course, and he dips low, and then, of course, they snap that back up, of course, but you'll gain Twist of Fate. It's weird because you can't always use it. It may be good on certain encounters, but I kind of feel that it's not as gameable because it requires you to heal someone. But Power Infusion or Contrition could be better bets overall. Halo and Divine Star. Alright, these are very similar effects. You know what they both look like. For the purposes of testing both of them, I will show you Halo, however. I'll show you Divine Star too, animation-wise. Both of these abilities do healing to allies that are hit, and they deal damage to enemies that are also hit in the affected areas. Divine Star being a much shorter cooldown. It's like the RE ball that goes out and comes back in. And Halo is the huge halo that you throw out like this. The initial damage it does for your atonement healing only counts one target. Only one. If you hit 12 mobs for 100,000 damage, only one of those hits will actually atonement heal anyone with atonement on them. Oops, sorry about that. There might have been like echo on my microphone. So it's weird that they've done this, because it would scale ridiculously if Halo and Divine Star counted everyone they hit, but they don't. Halo will atonement heal, but only one time, as long as it's one enemy. No matter how many enemies it hits. Same for Divine Star. If Divine Star hits 3 enemies, like right here, if I hit these 3 guys right here, you'll only see one atonement heal. Ready? 1. That's it. It's to probably stop them from being used as ridiculously gameable on lots of AoE targets. But obviously these are both for damage, I feel. They have some healing synergy, and I would say the best way to use Divine Star or Halo is to make sure that you're doing damage, and the damage from either of them is applying to your targets that have atonement. But you're also making it sure that like Divine Star goes through your targets and comes back. So it heals them going out, heals them coming in, and when it does damage, it'll also heal them once each, but only on one pass. So it's fine. I think it's a weird balancing point, but I think it makes sense that Halo and Divine Star have their own purpose, and they didn't want to make sure they didn't scale too problematically. I'm not going to talk about Cow. It's just Cow. It's an absorb shield you can cast. Grace is you increase your non-atonement based healing and absorptions by 30% on targets with atonement. So this means Grace gives you more straight up healing potential. So you put atonement on somebody, the bubble will be stronger, and then you can shadow mend them for stronger. If you took the penitent, you could atone them. You could penance them for more. It'll increase the damage. The healing that you do with radiance. Right? It's okay. It's a good one. I think it mostly benefits your AoE healing more than anything else. Because if you have multiple atonements up, and if you Divine Star through people or Halo and they hit people, it'll increase their healing taken. Because it's non-atonement based healing. It's the actual straight up healing amount. Shadow Covenant replaces Radiance, and it is a heal that is a large snap heal, but it puts a absorb shield that absorbs incoming healing based on half of the heal. It's a 6-second window, so it's meant to be kind of like weaved in the rotation. It's a huge heal, it costs less and casts faster than Radiance, but it's not meant to be spammed, because if you spam it, you're going to eat your own healing. You're going to absorb your own healing amount. And if you ever crit with it, you're going to get nothing out of it. So I don't know how this works. I don't really it's 5 targets, whereas Radiance is only 3. It does not apply Atonement. It applies the Healing Absorb shield. Other better healers will figure out how to make Shadow Covenant work. Like a topper offer. Like, if you're helping top the raid off and someone else is running, like, a Tranquility, then overall, their Tranquility will be reduced, but you can also spam this really fast to add more AoE healing to the raid group. But it's very much a weird Shadow heal. It's like, has that back and forth, like Shadow Mend. So it has a pro and a con. Otherwise, you have Purge the Wicked, which I can't show you how this actually spreads, but Purge the Wicked is a super holy version of Shadowed Pain, where it does proc your dark side, but it's a instant fire damage effect, and also a large amount of fire damage over 20 seconds, and it will spread to an additional nearby enemy when you cast Penance on the target. I can't show you that because these dummies won't spread the fire for some reason, because they're not in combat with me. But the nearby spread for Purge looks like about 4 to 5 yards, which could be bugged because nearby should mean 8. But it's a less globals because you're casting less Shadowed Pains. It's a spreadable dot, or a spammable dot, really. It lasts for a very long time. Of course, it will be amplified by a Schism or Twist of Fate if you get them to actually work with you. But I like Purge the Wicked. I think it makes a lot more sense because it reduces the amount of globals you're casting because it lasts longer than Shadowed Pain. And if you actually get it to spread, it does Pandemic as well. It doesn't spread based on the amount of duration on the debuff, but actually it just Pandemics, it refreshes it completely to maximum amount. So it's 26 seconds long. It's a really good dot. And it just constant renew healing, right? It's just healing all the time. But those are all the spells, those are all the artifact things, all the talents for the not Shadow Priest, but it's the Shadow plus Holy Priest squished together in a blender, and you pour it out in your Disciplined Priest smoothie. If you want to check out more about the Disciplined Priest, check my VOD below, or the bug report, and the notes that I've also included down below as well, or the Blizzard post that I've linked in that thread. I don't know. It feels fun. I think it's neat. But all of this BS math nonsense and the weird bonuses to Atonement and how it scales and how it doesn't scale, I think are really bad overall. I hope they change that. But please leave me your... I guess we'll just do Powered Shield bubble jokes. Or, I don't know. Talk about bubbles and Powered Shields and how amazing bubbling stuff is. Because I don't know what to tell you at the end of this video. But thank you all so much for watching. Hit that like button. It's been a great deal. Subscribe to see more of these in the future. And I will see you all. Oh boy. These last couple, man. I'll see you all in the next Legion testing video.